here in the snooker world, it is very much all attention on the World Championship. We've only got less than 5 weeks to go until the Crucible starts, almost 4 weeks until the World Championship qualifiers. So everyone's eyes are pretty much entirely on that. But before we get to that bridge, the women's had their World Championships last week, held out in China for the first time ever. And it was won by the woman in your screen, the home favourite and sort of emerging prodigy, Bai Yulu. And I'll focus on Bai in just 1 minute. But firstly, I want to talk about the tournament and how great it was to watch the women's game being played in a proper arena for a change, instead of, just a snooker hall somewhere, which is often where these sort of tournaments end up. I made a video last autumn after Rhiannon Evans won the UK Championship, and talked about how frustrating it was to see one of the biggest tournaments on the women's circuit be played on effectively club tables in club conditions and only watched by really a handful of people that would have known about it. And obviously it's been that way for quite some time. But China clearly marketed this event properly. It was played in a proper venue, and I believe that had a capacity of around 1,500 people. And if you judge from the photos of the event, sometimes you couldn't properly see the crowd from the camera angle in the stream. But photos provided after the event showed that it looks like there was a hefty chunk of that capacity was used in the tournament. And like I say, I watched matches over the weekend on the YouTube stream, and that was regularly getting sort of several thousand viewers. So the interest in the sport is clearly only getting bigger. And that really is a trend I hope to see continue. And then if we start looking at the players taking part in the tournament, there are 45 runners from 8 different countries. And actually, quite surprisingly, only 5 of those players were English, with the lion's share of participants coming from China, obviously the host nation, Hong Kong, and fairly surprisingly, Mongolia. And that in itself is quite a key statistic when you think of the fact that from 1976, which was the first year that the Women's World Championship happened, from that year to 2014, only one woman from outside the UK won this tournament. And that was Australian Leslie McElrath. And I think that was in 1977 or 1978. So, there's been a real dominance from the UK, obviously in the sport in general, but particularly the women's game. And it's only really since 2015 that there's been a sort of momentum shift there. Ji, she won 3 titles in 4 years. And in the last 3 years, we've seen 3 brand new winners of the tournament, all from Asia. We had back-to-back winners from Thailand in Mink and Baipat. And now we have China's first ever world champion in Bai Yulu. And this has been on the cards. She got to the final of this tournament last year. She got to the final of the UK Championship last October, where she lost to Rhiannon Evans, and also won the British Open last year as well. Actually, quite incredibly, she's only played in 5 tournaments on the women's circuit. She's won 2 of them. She's been the beaten finalist in another 2, and has one other semi-final to her name. So, 5 tournaments, at least getting to the semi-final or better, is an incredible strike rate for anyone, let alone a girl at the age of 20. And perhaps the most impressive thing about her is her scoring ability. At last year's World Championship, she made the highest break ever made at the Women's World Championship with a 127 break. And then this year, she made a 122 break in the final, which was not only the highest of that particular tournament, but the highest ever made in a Women's World Final. She also made breaks of 97 and 75 in that final as well, and also made a further 2 centuries throughout the tournament. So scoring-wise, she is clearly incredible. And, just a thoroughly deserving winner. And as a result of this, she's earned herself a 2-year tour card next season, and I'm personally already looking forward to seeing what she can do. If you're looking at perhaps just slight criticisms of players like Rhiannon Evans, Ji, Mink, is that they haven't really scored heavily enough in their matches on the Pro Tour, and that's prevented them from winning more matches. So, if Bai can keep up this type of scoring going forwards, she definitely has a chance of picking up a scalp or 2. And it also probably should be mentioned that Bai not only won the main Women's World Championship, but she won the Under-21s World Championship as well. So, as weeks go, not a bad one for her. And then just finally, I want to touch on a few of the other players that had pretty strong weeks. If we look at Bai Pat, the defending champion, she got to the last 16, defending her title before losing 4-0 to Rhiannon Evans in the last 16. And probably can consider herself a little bit unlucky. You know, she was the number one seed in the tournament, obviously. And Rhiannon Evans, I believe, was number 4. So for those two to meet in the last 16 does feel very harsh. Typically a number 1 seed and a number 4 seed wouldn't meet until a semi-final, or, at least a quarter-final. So yeah, definitely unlucky for her to meet such an experienced player so early in the tournament. But obviously the women's seedings work slightly differently. Speaking of Rhiannon Evans, another good tournament, 12-time winner. She's always going to be there or thereabouts in every tournament that she plays. But the only disappointment for her is in that semi-final against Bai. She was 3-0 up. And not often does Rhiannon Evans throw away leads, but that's exactly what she done. 3-0 to lose 5-3 is very unexpected for Rhiannon. And the most disappointing thing for her in that match was, I believe it was the 6th frame. She was 3-2 up, potted the respotted black to go 4-2 up, but then went in off at the same time. So then suddenly it's 3-all. Her head's probably a bit all over the place. And yeah, never won another frame, lost 5-3. Fantastic win for Bai there, of course. But slight disappointment for Rhiannon, not able to add to her tally of 12. And then you also had Mink, obviously beaten finalist, already a world champion from 2 years ago. And the other semi-finalist was on Ji Yi, the 3-time winner. And it is really that cluster of players that are just so far ahead of the rest at the moment. I do think that gap is closing. There were a few close matches in the tournament, but it is that cluster that are just head and shoulders above the rest. And those are the main challenges to Rhiannon. Obviously, Rhiannon Evans had that just period of dominance from sort of the mid-noughties through to the mid-2010s. That's where she won the bulk of her titles. Just because she had competition, but not competition at the level that she has now. The likes of Ji, Mink, Bai Pat, and now Bai have both come in and really sort of shaken things up. There's a better distribution of titles. And obviously, as a result of all of this, they're all getting cracks at the professional tour. And the bonus of having a tournament like they had this week, and I talked about it a lot in my review of the Women's UK Championship last October, and I'll say it again, the best way that we can get these ladies sort of prepared for the professional tour is to get them playing in tournaments under professional conditions. So that means playing on professional standard tables instead of club tables. It means playing in front of actual crowds that are watching them in... I'm not saying it has to be massive arenas, but at least sort of a venue that isn't a snooker hall. All of that's going to help. Obviously it is a massive step up from the standard in the women's game up to the professional circuit. I don't think anyone is ever going to dispute that fact. But if you keep just making them play on club tables, they're never going to be able to adjust quickly enough. Even the Under-21 World Championships for the men, that's always played in professional conditions. It is only right, and it's only about time that it's happened for the women too. Really happy about that. Really can't praise the tournament enough as a whole. I thought it was really, really exciting. Really good standards. The standards only going up and up and up. And yeah, like I say, I really hope Bai that does make a good impression of herself over the next 2 years when she's got a tour card.